So yesterday we used right triangle trig to find missing sides. Today we're going to use right triangle trig to find missing angles. So the first few steps are exactly the same. We still label the triangle the same, we still highlight the same, we still set up the equation, but our last steps when we solve them, they're a little bit different. So if we think about like multiplying, so if I have x times 5 and I want to solve for x, how do I get rid of multiplying? You divide. How do I get rid of adding? You subtract. So those things are opposites of each other. They're inverses of each other. So sine, cosine, and tangent also have inverses of each other. So to find a missing angle, we use the inverse trig functions. And those are sine to the negative 1, cosine to the negative 1, and tan to the negative 1. So just like yesterday, always, you want to make sure that you're in degree mode. So remember to do that on your calculator, you go to mode beside the blue button, and it's the third line down. And so you want to scroll down. You want to scroll down and make sure degree is highlighted. Hit enter. So then if you look at your sine, cosine, and tangent buttons, above them they have a blue sine -1, cosine -1, tan -1. Bless you. So that's what we're going to be using today to solve. So to get those, you just hit second sine, second cosine, and second tan. Okay? But our ratios are still the same. So let's label this triangle just to review. So today we're going to be missing the angle. Yesterday it told us the angle. Today we don't know the angle. But it's going to have a little, this little thing, you remember that's called a theta. Or it could have an x. Either one, it don't matter, it's just the unknown. But that's the angle we want to highlight.
So there's always going to be something there.
Yes. Yes. If there's not, I'll show you what we do, because we'll do one like that. So if we arc it, those two sides that the arc touches is what we're highlighting. So this side, this side. Okay. Then, just like yesterday, labeling it the same. So we got our right angle, across from it is our hypotenuse. The other highlighted side is adjacent. And then across from our angle, never highlighted, is the opposite. Okay. So same thing as yesterday. Any questions on that part? So then our ratios are still the same as yesterday. We still have them over here on the board. So sine is oh heck. So opposite over hypotenuse. Okay. So remember it's oh heck, another hour. So cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Yeah. So oh heck, another hour of algebra. Good. So opposite over adjacent. Okay. Same thing as yesterday. Any questions though? Alright, let's do one. So let's look at number 1. So the first thing we do, same thing that we did yesterday. We're going to highlight our angle. The only difference is we don't know the angle measure, okay? But we're still going to arc it and highlight it the same way. So if I arc it, that tells me I'm highlighting AC and AB. Any questions on which one to highlight? Then we label it. So we've got our right angle. Across from it is our hypotenuse. Our other highlighted side is always adjacent. And then across from our theta, never highlighted, is the opposite. Any questions on that? Okay. So if I look at this one, our difference today is that we know two sides. Which two sides do I know? Adjacent and hypotenuse. So I don't care about the opposite. But if I'm looking at adjacent and hypotenuse, which trig function do I use? Cosine. Everybody okay with that? Okay. Now, today we do cosine of the angle. We don't know the angle. Yes, so you can put an x, you can put a theta, it don't matter. Whatever you want to do. I'm going to do a theta just because that's what they have, but if you want to do an x, that's fine. And then we set up our ratio adjacent over hypotenuse, so 6/9. Okay, so same thing that we did yesterday. The only difference is our unknown now is our angle. Questions? Okay. So I think these problems are a little bit easier because you don't have to decide what to multiply by or anything like that. You just get rid of that cosine. So to get rid of cosine, we do inverse cosine, which is cosine to the -1 on both sides. Okay? And so what that does is that cancels out that cosine. So we're just left with theta equals cosine -1, and then our fraction goes inside. Yep, and so now all we have to do is just type that in our calculator. So again, got to make sure you're in degree mode, and then to type that we hit second cosine, and that gives you that -1. And then we just type in the fraction, 6 divided by 9. And there it is. So we get about 48.19 degrees, because today we are talking about angles. Any questions on that? You might not get that when you typed it in. Alright, so we got number 2. So number 2, again we want to arc it, and those are the two sides that we highlight. And so again, we label it. We find our right angle. Across from it's our hypotenuse. So that's our 13. Our other highlighted side's always adjacent. And then across the triangle, never highlighted, is opposite. So again, this is our most important part. So are there any questions about highlighting or labeling? Alright, so now today we know two sides. What two sides do we know? Adjacent and hypotenuse. So which trig function is adjacent and hypotenuse? Cosine again. So again we do cosine of theta because we don't know that angle. That's what we're finding. Equals, and then what's my ratio? Good. 12 over 13. So adjacent over hypotenuse. Questions? Okay. So again, all we have to do now is just get rid of that cosine. So we do inverse cosine. So that cancels out our cosine, so we're left with theta on the left, and then cosine -1 of 12 over 13. And so again, we just type it in. So to get the -1, you do second cosine, and then our fraction, 12 divided by 13. And hopefully you get 22.62. Questions? Alright, let's look at 3. So if we're looking at 3, again, we want to highlight. So we can arc our angle. So I'm highlighting BA and CB. Okay. And then we're labeling. So we got our right angle across from it to our hypotenuse. Our other highlighted side is adjacent. And then across the triangle, never highlighted, is opposite. So which trig function do I need to use? Good. Tangent. Because I know opposite and adjacent. And opposite and adjacent is tan. So tan of our angle, which again we don't know, that's what we're finding. And then on this one you can't go wrong because they're both 3. So 3 over 3. So up top we did cosine to -1 to get rid of cosine. Down here we'll do tan to -1 to get rid of tan.
Excuse me, please. Can I have camera B ready to go?
Yes.
Thank you.
So we get tan -1, 3 over 3. And what do you get when you type that in? 45. Gotcha. How else could I have known that angle was going to be 45? Yeah. if I have 3 and 3, what kind of triangle is this? It's isosceles. Good. So if this angle, if these sides are the same, if these angles are the same, well, if this is 90, that means I have 90 left over, so they both have to be 45. If you didn't catch that, that's okay. Alright, let's take a couple minutes. Y'all do 4 on your own, if you haven't already. You can, but you don't have to. Okay. Here's the worksheet. So, what'd you get? Good. So, which trig function did you use? Good. So, hopefully you said tan of theta equals, and then opposite over adjacent, so 4 over 13. And then you do the inverse. And then hopefully you got 17 point. Questions. Okay. So 5 is a little bit different because now we want to find both of our missing angles. So if we look down here and we want to find both of the missing angles, then we don't know which one to highlight because we want them both. So what you do is you just pick one. So which one do y'all want to do, A or B? B. Alright, we'll find B. So if we find B, we'll arc B. And then that's what we highlight. So no matter which one you pick, your hypotenuse is always the same. But your opposite and your adjacent, those are what depend on which angle that you pick. Again, it don't matter which one you pick. You can pick A, it don't matter. Just don't pick C. But A or B. So then if we label it, our 7 is our adjacent. Across from the B is 4, so that's our opposite. So which trig function should I use to find B? Tan, good. So tan of B, and then O over A, so 4 over 7. And then just like 3 and 4, we do inverse tan. So hopefully you type that in and you get that B equals 29.74. So, do I have to do trig in order to find A? No. Why? Good, because we know all of the angles of our triangles should add up to be 180. So I can say A equals 180 minus 90 plus 29.70. So in these triangles, regardless if it's a right triangle or whatever, all of our triangle things that we've been talking about still apply. So definitely use them to your advantage to make your life a little bit easier. And so you should get 60.26. Questions?